Hi everyone, naughty little boy here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Big Ups album, Two Parts Together. This is the latest full-length album from New York indie rock, noise rock, and post-hardcore outfit Big Ups, who have dropped two very solid albums thus far, which I've given very glowing reviews to.
18 Hours of Static.
A very wordy and intense art punk record dropped back in 2014. It had a kind of aggressive yet abstract sound that I hope the band would stick to on future releases. But instead, the band went a more abstract but still equally enjoyable route on their next LP,
Before
A Million Universes, a measurably darker and more mature release, exploring the darker and moodier side of the math rock and post-hardcore genres, pulling heavily on bands like Slint. Now, even though that record, that follow-up, was still a very good underground rock record, I still had a feeling that
the band
still had room to improve and grow and sort of drum up their own sound in this particular style. I mean, sure, they carried the torch for this sound really well, wrote some really great tunes, laid very good performances to tape, sounded a lot like the band was taking this mid-90s experimental underground sound and making it a little bit more weird and adding some throat-shredding screams onto it. So with this new album over here, I was just looking for progression. I was looking for the next step in the band's sound. But Two Parts Together kind of sees Big Ups no closer to doing that, honestly. In fact, I think they're kind of drowning in their influences more than ever. And as abstract as the band likes to play it on this new album, quite a few of the songs on this thing are pretty formulaic, relying heavily on this loud, soft dynamic to make the tracks have any semblance of an appeal, kind of lulling the audience into a stupor with very subtle, very quiet, very understated drums and guitars, vocals that don't really go above the volume of a murmur. And then all of a sudden the band will just bust in with this wall of guitars and just getting right in your face with these animalistic vocals. Oh my god. The heavy bass, the pounding drums. Occasionally it does create a compelling moment on the album, like the song Trying to Love, which features this very eerie male-female vocal mix, some very sparse drums and guitar lines that move through a few passages until we hit this really weird percussive bit that's bustling, kind of tension building, a heavy explosion of rage at the midpoint of the song, a very weary outro that I like a lot. It's a good progression, and again, like one of the better tracks that sort of abuses this whole loud soft thing. A few of the other cuts, notably the starting two songs, feel so much less logical in their flow and their progression, kind of disjointed comparably, so the payoff, the volume, isn't quite as sweet. On the closing track, Imaginary Dog Walker, the band actually drives their instrumentation down to the point of really pretty much just silence, before returning with one final build-up that's actually string-backed and is pretty bestial. Really, the band does save the best for last on this one. And then, there are a few cuts on here that have these really tight, kind of groovy guitar licks and bass lines, very expressive drumming. Kind of sounds like something out of a Fugazi song. On the songs PPP and Tell Them. And as much as I love Fugazi, one of the greatest bands of all time, I can't really say that Big Ups really put their own twist on this whole thing. The best of the direct cuts on this album, though, has to be the song Fear, which has some very sharp guitar phrasing, a driving linear structure, kind of almost has a krautrock vibe to it, mixed with a dash of Mission of Burma, especially toward the end of the track where you kind of get this psychedelic wall of guitar layers and vocal samples, bass and drums. Easily the trippiest moment on the entire record, as the mix generally on this thing is super dry. Like, all the instrumentation is very upfront, very raw, very crisp, very organic. The mix really kind of buries or hides nothing, leaves nothing up to the imagination. It's really just kind of all right there, naked as the day we all were when we came out of the womb. So I certainly commend this album on that, on its very heavy sound, on its organic performances, on the handful of good tunes on here that they managed to deliver. But also on this LP, there are a few tracks that are super disjointed and not all that fulfilling. There is a huge lack of refreshing ideas. The vocals a lot of the time are pretty so-so and underwhelming, and overall the runtime of this thing, even though it is a tad longer than their debut, I find it to be kind of meager. And as much as I enjoy the genre of music the band dabbles in, this record to me just kind of feels like an exercise in nostalgia, not really an attempt to build on the form or improve on past efforts, because I just fail to see anything that this album does better than anything Big Ups have released up until this point. You could even say it sounds like a far less interesting version of their last album. As a result, I'm feeling kind of a strong 5 to a light 6 on this thing. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like, please subscribe, and please don't cry. Just leave a comment in the comments if you're feeling full of thoughts. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Also the link to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell as well. Anthony Fantano, Big Ups forever.